My name is Bridget Harper, 42 years old, and yesterday afternoon my own brother decided to burn the last bridge between us in front of 40 people. We were 20 minutes into the annual shareholders meeting at Harper Dairy Farms, the same room where Dad used to hand out Christmas bonuses in coffee mugs, when Connor suddenly slammed his folder shut and stood up. He didn't raise his voice at first. He just smiled, that slow, venomous smile I hadn't seen since we were teenagers fighting over the tractor keys. "Bridget," he said, loud enough for every cousin, every investor, every employee in the back row to hear, "Security will escort you out now. You're done here, little sister. For good." The room went dead. 40 pairs of eyes turned to me. I felt the heat crawl up my neck, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of tears. 2 guards appeared faster than I thought possible. One of them even looked sorry. They took my elbow like I was some stranger causing a scene. My chair scraped loud across the tile as they walked me past the long table, past the pitchers of ice water nobody touched anymore, past Connor still standing there with that same triumphant grin. I kept my head up until the glass doors closed behind me. The second they did, the grin was gone from my mind, and something colder took its place. I walked straight to my truck in the front lot, climbed in, and locked the doors. The cab still smelled like hay and the peppermint gum I keep in the console. My hands weren't even shaking when I opened the laptop on the passenger seat. 1 new email, subject line blank, recipient list, 12 independent board members, Joel Caldwell, and 1 encrypted SEC whistleblower portal. Attachments, 127 files. I had spent the last 18 months collecting, while everyone thought I was just helping out at the plant. I stared at the big blue send button for maybe 3 whole seconds. Then I pressed it. The little progress bar filled in less than a heartbeat delivered. I closed the lid, tossed the laptop onto the seat, and started the engine. Connor was still inside laughing, thinking he'd finally gotten rid of the quiet little sister, who knew where every single skeleton was buried. He has no idea that by tomorrow morning, when he walks into that emergency board meeting he doesn't even know has been called yet, the only one trembling will be him. Quick note, if you're watching this and you haven't hit subscribe yet, do it now, and smash that bell. Over 90% of you are still ghosts. Don't make our little team cry into their coffee. It takes 2 seconds, and it means the world. Rant over. Back to the story. Tomorrow, the proof he spent 5 years hiding explodes in front of everyone, and justice is going to fall hard. Let's just say the milk in Fresno is about to curdle. I pulled out of the parking lot, windows down, letting the dry Central Valley heat slap me awake while Connor's laugh still echoed in my head. 18 years. That's how long I had poured my life into Harper Dairy Farms without ever asking for a title that sounded important. Dad built the place from 200 cows and a second-hand separator back when Fresno was still mostly almonds and raisins. When he stepped down 5 years ago, he handed the reins to Connor because the oldest boy should carry the name. I didn't fight it. I just stayed in the background, keeping the books clean, the contracts tight, and the milk flowing when equipment broke at 3 in the morning. Nobody noticed as long as the checks cleared and the cheese kept winning state fair medals. Then one Tuesday night 2 winters ago, I found the first discrepancy, a routine payment to a Nevada shell company for consulting on whey protein futures. $23,000. Then another. Within 6 months, the numbers climbed past 8 figures. Connor was siphoning money through fake invoices while telling Dad the margins were just getting tighter because of feed prices. I kept my mouth shut and started copying everything: bank records, forged signatures, shipping manifests that never left the yard. Every late night, I told the family I was catching up on paperwork. I was actually building a trail nobody could erase. That was only half the rot. Last spring, I flew to Chicago for a conference and saw Connor at the hotel bar, with a woman who was definitely not Shannon. The next morning, I recognized her face from the term sheet: Kimberly Walsh, CFO of Dairy West Partners, the conglomerate, ready to hand us $380 million for 68% of the company. By the time I got home, I had photos, hotel receipts, and text messages that would make Shannon file for divorce before breakfast. I spent the next 18 months acting like the same quiet, dependable Bridget everyone took for granted. I smiled at board dinners while Connor bragged about modernizing the family business. I brought casseroles to Shannon when the kids were sick. I even proofread the sale presentation that had Kimberly's signature on page 40-7. And every single document, every screenshot, every recorded call went into one encrypted folder labeled insurance. Do not delete. I never planned to use it. Blood is supposed to be thicker than money. right? But yesterday, when Connor stood up in that meeting and told 40 people I was no longer welcome in the company Dad spent 50 years building, he made the decision for me. That folder became one email. Recipients: all 12 independent board members who actually read the fine print. Joel Caldwell, my attorney, who thinks family loyalty ends where felony begins. And the sex whistleblower portal that promises anonymity. And a nice percentage if they recover the cash. Subject line: blank. Body: one sentence. Please see attached documentation regarding material fraud in connection with the proposed Dairy West transaction. 127 attachments. Wire transfers. Shell company filings. Love notes with dates that matched missing inventory reports. Everything time-stamped, notarized, where possible, and impossible to delete once it hit their inboxes. I scheduled the send for 5:58 the next morning because I'm not cruel. I just believe in letting people sleep on the choices they make. I built that file for the day he forgot I was family. And yesterday he did. I turned west onto Herndon Avenue, past the silos that still carry Dad's original block letter name, past the fields where I learned to drive a tractor before I had a learner's permit. The sun was dropping behind the Coast Range, painting everything the color of fresh cream. I felt nothing close to victory yet, just the cold, clean certainty that comes when you finally stop protecting someone who never protected you. Tomorrow, the board will open their laptops to a nightmare wearing my brother's face, and I'll be drinking coffee on the porch when the first call comes. 5:58 the next morning, the email left my outbox for good. I was already up, standing barefoot on the cool tile of my kitchen in Clovis, watching the coffee maker gurgle like it knew something big was coming. The first confirmation ping hit Joel Caldwell's phone at 6. By 6:15, every independent board member had opened the message. Patricia Norris, chair of the audit committee and the only person Dad ever trusted with the real numbers, was the first to call it in. At 6:27, my phone buzzed on the counter. Unknown number. I let it ring twice before answering. Bridget, it's Pat Norris. Her voice was steel-wrapped in velvet, the same tone she used when she caught Connor trying to expense a Vegas weekend as feed additive research. We need every board member in the conference room at 8, no exceptions. Tell no one. She hung up before I could reply. 20 miles away in northeast Fresno, Connor was still asleep when his phone started blowing up. Shannon told me later, he rolled over, squinted at the screen, and saw 15 missed calls before 7. Patricia's name sat at the top of the list. He called her back from the bathroom, toothbrush still in his mouth. Expecting a routine update about the Dairy West closing schedule, instead he got one sentence. Be in the boardroom at 8. Connor, do not be late. He showed up at 7:51 wearing yesterday's shirt and the panicked smile he saves for bankers. The parking lot was already full of cars he didn't recognize, black sedans with government plates tucked between the pickups. He walked in through the employee entrance like always, nodding at the front desk girl who suddenly wouldn't meet his eyes. The hallway to the executive wing felt longer than usual. When he pushed open the conference room door at 7:59, 12 people were already seated. Patricia sat dead center, laptop open, face unreadable. The other independent directors flanked her like jurors. Joel Caldwell leaned against the far wall, arms folded, giving nothing away. Dad wasn't there yet. Nobody stood when Connor entered. He tried the grin anyway. Morning, everyone. Little early for a Thursday, huh? Patricia didn't smile back. She clicked once on her trackpad, and the projector lit up the screen behind her. The first slide was simple. A bank transfer for $2.8 million dated exactly 36 months ago. Destination: Desert Way Holdings, LLC, Reno, Nevada. Signatory: Connor Matthew Harper. The room stayed quiet enough to hear the air conditioning hum. Connor's face went the color of skim milk. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. This has to be some kind of mistake. Patricia clicked again. Next slide. Incorporation papers for Desert Way Holdings, signed the same week. Registered agent: Connor M. Harper. She let that sit for 5 full seconds. Then advanced, click. A chain of emails between Connor and Kimberly Walsh. Intimate ones. Dates matching the exact days inventory went missing. From 3 different plants. Click. Hotel receipts. Click text screenshots. Click a forged shipping manifest that turned real milk into $28 million of thin air. Connor gripped the back of the nearest chair. His knuckles went white. Patricia finally spoke. We received an anonymous package this morning with 127 exhibits. Every one of them points to systematic fraud over 5 years. The SEC already has copies. She paused. looked straight at him. Derry West was notified at 6, there on speaker. The phone in the center of the table lit up. A woman's voice, cold and professional, filled the room. Kimberly Walsh. Harper Derry. This is Derry West Legal. Effective immediately, we are terminating all discussions. Expect formal notice within the hour. The line went dead. Connor's legs gave out. He sat hard in the nearest chair without being invited. Someone pushed a bottle of water toward him. He didn't take it. That was the exact moment the door opened again and Dad walked in, guided by Joel Caldwell. He took one look at the screen, one look at his oldest son, and the temperature in the room dropped another 10 degrees. Connor tried one last time. Dad, I can explain. Dad didn't answer. He just stared at the evidence glowing on the wall like it was written in fire. The conference room. Door slammed at 8, and Patricia Norris didn't waste another second. She stood, remote in hand, and the projector advanced to the first reel damning slide. A spreadsheet titled, Desert Way Holdings Cash Flow 2021 to 2025. Every cell was red. $28 million funneled out in chunks that never looked big enough to trigger an audit on their own. She let the numbers hang there while the room absorbed the silence. Exhibit A, she said, voice flat. Shell Company Incorporated in Nevada. Sole officer, Connor Matthew Harper. Funds moved through 6 different farm accounts, all under the threshold for mandatory board review. She clicked again. Wire instructions. Signature pages. Connor's looping handwriting on every single one. One of the independent directors, a retired admiral from Coronado, muttered something that sounded like prayer under his breath. Patricia kept going. Exhibit B, correspondence between Mr. Harper and Kimberly Walsh, CFO of Derry West Partners. These messages begin 14 months ago and continue through last week. The screen filled with screenshots. Hearts, late-night promises. Calendar invites labeled off-site strategy session. That lined up perfectly with missing tanker loads. Connor tried to stand. His knees wouldn't cooperate. This is private. You have no right wrong. Patricia cut in. When you use company devices and company time to conduct an affair that compromises a $300-80 million transaction, it becomes very much our business. She advanced. Hotel keycard logs. Reimbursement requests for client entertainment with Kimberly's initials in the approval chain. A selfie of the two of them in a suite at the Pfister in Milwaukee the same night our plant in Merced reported a 40,000-gallon spoilage loss. The Admiral wasn't praying anymore. At 8:17, the side door opened. Joel Caldwell stepped in first, then Dad. He was wearing the same navy blazer he wore to my high school graduation. The one with the frayed cuff he refuses to replace. His eyes went straight to the screen. Then to Connor hunched in his chair, like a man waiting for the trapdoor to drop. Dad didn't speak. He just pulled out the chair at the far end and sat. Patricia gave him a small nod and clicked to the final slide. A single email from Connor to Kimberly dated 9 days ago. Subject. After closing came in account numbers. Body. Once the wire hits, we're gone. Fiji first, then wherever. Love you. The room went colder than the walk-in cooler out back. Patricia set the remote down. At 6:45 this morning, Derry West Council received the same package. They requested to join this call. She pressed speaker on the conference phone. A tone, then a crisp female voice none of us recognized at first. This is Ellen Chen, General Counsel for Derry West Partners. Is Mr. Lawrence Harper present? Dad cleared his throat. Speaking. Mr. Harper. Effective immediately, we are terminating all negotiations and withdrawing our letter of intent. The material adverse change clause has been triggered by clear evidence of fraud and conflict of interest at the executive level. You will receive formal written notice within the hour. We wish the family the best under the circumstances. Before anyone could respond, another voice came on the line. Quieter, shaking just enough to be unmistakable. Connor, Kimberly Walsh said, we're out. The call ended with a soft click. Connor lunged for the phone like he could pull her back through the wire. Kim. Wait. Nothing. Dad finally spoke. Voice gravel and heartbreak. $28 million. Son. That's 3 generations of calluses and 3 you stole from your own blood. Connor's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Patricia gathered her folder. The board will convene again at 2 to discuss interim leadership and mandatory reporting to federal authorities. Connor, you are relieved of all duties, effective now. Security will escort you to clear your office. 2 uniformed guards appeared in the doorway as if they'd been waiting for the cue. Connor looked around the table, hunting for one friendly face. There wasn't any. Not even from the cousin who used to let him win at poker during harvest parties. He stood on legs that barely worked, took one step toward Dad. "I can fix this. I swear I can pay it back." Dad turned his back. The guards took his arms. Connor didn't fight. He just let them lead him past the projector, still glowing with his own words, past the family portrait on the wall that suddenly looked 30 years out of date. The door closed behind him with the same final slam it had opened with. Connor tore out of the building at 10:30, tie flapping like a surrender flag. He didn't wait for the elevator. He took the stairs 2 at a time, burst through the side exit, and ran across the asphalt that was already shimmering at 102 degrees. His silver F350 was parked crooked in the fire lane. He jumped in, slammed the door so hard the window rattled, and peeled out toward Clovis doing 90 on Herndon. I was on the front porch, watering the rosemary, when his truck fishtailed into my driveway, kicking up gravel like buckshot. The engine cut off mid. The driver door flew open and Connor stumbled out, shoes half untied, shirt soaked through at the armpits. He saw me and started walking fast across the lawn. Then the walking turned into a stumble, and the stumble turned into knees hitting the dry St. Augustine grass right in front of the steps. "Bridget," his voice cracked on the second syllable. "Please." I set the hose down and let the water run into the flower bed. He stayed on his knees, palms open like he was begging for rain. "You have to stop this. Call them. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you sent it by accident." I didn't move. Connor crawled 2 feet closer, grass stains blooming dark on his slacks. "I'll pay it back. Every cent. I'll sell the boat, the cabin, whatever it takes. Just fix this." Behind him, the truck door was still open, radio blaring some country song about cheating and regret. He didn't notice my phone buzzed in my pocket. "Shannon." I let it ring. Connor heard it. "That's her. She's losing her mind. The kids are asking why Daddy's crying in the driveway." "Bridget, they're your nieces and nephew." I finally spoke. "You made sure yesterday I wasn't family anymore. Remember?" He dropped his forehead to the ground, shoulders shaking. Sweat dripped off his hair and made dark spots on the lawn. "I was wrong. I was stupid. I was scared of losing control. Please." The front door opened behind me. Reed stepped out in basketball shorts and yesterday's t-shirt, hair still wet from the shower. He took one look at Connor on his knees and froze. "Bridge, what the hell is going on?" Connor lifted his head, eyes red. "Reed, talk to her. Make her listen." Reed's gaze moved from his brother to me. "You sent the files." It wasn't a question. I gave him the smallest nod. Reed walked down the 3 steps and stood beside me. He didn't say anything else. He didn't have to. The way he positioned himself half a step in front of me said everything. Shannon's call went to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it rang again. I silenced it. Connor tried one more time. "If this goes public, I go to prison. Real prison. You want that on your conscience? Your own brother." The sun beat straight down. Heat rose off the concrete in visible waves. Connor's face was turning the color of raw steak. I looked at him for a long moment. "You stopped being my brother the second you decided $28 million was worth more than Dad's trust." He opened his mouth, closed it, then dropped his head again. A low sound came out of him that wasn't quite crying and wasn't quite screaming. Reed put his hand on my shoulder. "Let's go inside." I turned, walked up the steps, and shut the door without looking back. Through the peephole, I watched Connor stay on his knees another full minute while the temperature climbed higher. Then he dragged himself to his feet, staggered to the truck, and sat behind the wheel with the door open, staring at my house like it might open if he stared hard enough. It didn't single quotes. The following Monday, the certified letter from the SEC arrived at Connor's house while he was still in bed. Shannon signed for it, hands shaking so hard the delivery driver asked if she was okay. She carried the thick envelope straight to the kitchen table, slid it open, and read the first page out loud to an empty room. "Formal investigation. Securities fraud. Wire fraud. Possible criminal referral." They wanted Connor downtown for an interview in 9 days. By noon, the banks started calling. First the operating line at Wells Fargo. Frozen. Then the revolving credit at Bank of the West. Frozen. The farm manager texted a screenshot of the corporate checking account. $11,847.62 remaining, and a red banner that read administrative hold. "Do not disperse." Dairy West's termination letter landed by FedEx at 2:15. 8 pages of legalese that boiled down to one line. The $380-million deal was dead. And they were suing for due diligence costs already incurred. Connor spent the afternoon on the phone, begging every lender he knew. Nobody took his call past the receptionist. One old fraternity brother who still owed him a favor finally picked up and said, "Connor, the feds are involved. I can't touch this with a 10-foot pole." That night, Dad called the family to the old homestead. The one with the creaky porch swing and the kitchen table we used to do homework on. Shannon came alone. Connor wasn't invited. Dad had the lawyer draw up the papers that afternoon. He laid them in the center of the table like a deck of cards nobody wanted to touch. 51% of the voting shares were being transferred. Immediately, 26 to me, 25 to Reed. The rest of the non-voting stock would stay in a trust for the grandchildren, but Connor's name was removed from every beneficiary line. Dad looked older than I'd ever seen him. The lines around his eyes had turned into canyons overnight. He pushed the main document across the table, toward an empty chair where Connor should have been sitting. "As of this moment," he said, voice flat and final, "Connor Harper is no longer an owner, officer, or beneficiary of anything carrying my name. He is no longer welcome on any Harper property. He is no longer my son." Shannon started crying quietly into a paper towel. Reed reached over and squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. Dad wasn't finished. "The house on Woodward is paid for. Shannon and the kids can stay as long as they need, but Connor moves out by the end of the week." He signed the last page with the same pen he used to sign my high school permission slips. The ink looked blacker than usual. When it was my turn, I signed without hesitation. Reed did the same. The notary stamped everything in red. It was done in under 4 minutes. Shannon whispered, "He has nowhere to go." Dad didn't blink. He made his choices. Now he lives with them. He stood up slowly, joints popping, and walked out to the porch. I followed. We watched the sun drop behind the same almond orchards he planted the year I was born. He put his hand on the railing and spoke so low I barely heard it. "I built this place for all 3 of you." He just burned it down and tried to sell the ashes. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. 3 days later, the U.S. Attorney's Office filed a sealed indictment. Connor got served at a cheap motel off Highway 99. Shannon packed his clothes into trash bags and left them on the driveway. The bank scheduled the foreclosure auction on the processing plant for 30 days out. Everything he touched turned to dust. In less than a week, 6 weeks later, the preliminary hearing was held downtown in the federal courthouse. On Tulare Street, I sat in the back row with Reed and Joel Caldwell. Connor shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, wrists and ankles chained, hair buzzed short for lice protocol. He looked 40 pounds lighter and 20 years older. When the marshal removed the cuffs so he could sign the plea sheet, the metal left red rings on his skin. The prosecutor laid out 7 felony counts: wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, false statements to a financial institution, and 2 counts of tax evasion. Maximum exposure, 23 years. She clicked through the same slides Patricia had used, plus a few new ones the FBI added after raiding the office. Connor stared at the floor the entire time. His public defender tried to argue for release on bail. The judge denied it in under 30 seconds. "Flight risk and danger to the community," she said, and banged the gavel. That same afternoon, the bankruptcy trustee filed the Chapter 11 petition. Harper Dairy Farms officially became a debtor in possession with 90 days to reorganize or liquidate. The big processing plant on Jensen was scheduled for auction in 45 days. Every lender wanted their piece first. Reed and I spent the next 2 weeks negotiating with the creditors committee. Dad signed over his remaining shares to us for 1 cent each on the dollar. Exactly 1 cent per share. Just enough to make it legal. The judge approved the plan in a 5-minute hearing. Nobody contested. Overnight, the company became Harper Renewal Dairy LLC, owned 100% by Reed and me. We kept the best herds, sold off 3 satellite plants, and renegotiated every milk contract from scratch. Within 30 days, the new checks started clearing. The old name disappeared from the silos. Connor got moved to the North Kern State Prison Reception Center while waiting for sentencing. Shannon filed for divorce the same week and took the kids to Oregon to live with her sister. She changed their last names back to her maiden one before the school year started. I went to one sentencing hearing. The only family member who did. The prosecutor asked for 15 years. The judge gave him 12, plus $10 million in restitution he'll never be able to pay. When they read the sentence, Connor finally looked up. His eyes found mine across the courtroom. I didn't look away. I just watched until the marshals let him out. Outside on the courthouse steps, a reporter asked if I felt vindicated. I told her the truth. I feel like I finally stopped carrying someone else's lies. Reed met me at the truck. We drove back to the plant in silence, windows down, letting the valley heat burn away whatever was left. The orange jumpsuit was the last time I ever saw my brother. This morning, I'm sitting in the new office off Highway 168, boots up on the desk, watching the sun come up over rows of healthy Holsteins that actually belong to us again. Harper. Renewal Dairy is profitable for the first time in 6 years. We kept the core herd, modernized to plants, and signed direct contracts with 3 national chains that pay on time. The silos wear fresh white paint with the new logo. Just a simple H and an R intertwined. No more old family crest. Reed runs day-to-day operations. I handle the books and the long-term deals. We promoted from within, gave raises nobody expected, and the turnover rate dropped to almost 0. Dad moved into the guest room at my place the week after sentencing. He sold the big house on Woodward, gave the proceeds to Shannon for the kids, and now spends his days walking the pastures with a cup of coffee, talking to the cows like they're old friends. At night, he falls asleep in the recliner, watching baseball. He never mentions Connor. Neither do we. Connor's name no longer appears on any document, any mailbox, any Christmas card. His phone number is blocked on every family phone. The kids call Reed Uncle Reed now, without hesitation. When they ask about their dad, Shannon just says he's away for work. One day they'll learn the truth, but it won't come from us. I still get the occasional letter forwarded from the prison. Same pleading tone, same promises that next time will be different. They go straight into the trash unopened. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to stay burned so nobody else falls through the holes. I learned the hard way that family isn't a free pass to steal, lie, or humiliate the people who spent their lives holding everything together. Loyalty has to run both ways, or it isn't loyalty. It's just a one-sided debt someone keeps adding interest to. This morning I finally cleaned out the last drawer in the old roll-top desk Dad gave me when I turned 16. At the bottom was the last family photo we ever took together, Christmas 5 years ago. All of us smiling in front of the tree. Connor stood right in the middle, arm around Dad like he hadn't already started draining the company dry. I took the scissors and cut him out. Clean and straight down the middle. The rest of us stayed intact. Dad, Red, me, even Shannon, and the kids who were still toddlers then. I slipped the ruined photo into a plain envelope, wrote return to sender across the front, and dropped it in the outgoing mail. Then I closed the drawer. Outside the window, the new herd grazed in the early light, bells clanking soft and steady. The valley smelled like wet earth and fresh silage, the way it's supposed to. Some things you don't forgive, some people you don't get back, and sometimes the only way to save what's left of your family is to cut the poison out for good. Thanks for sticking with me to the end. If this one hit home, subscribe and turn on notifications. We drop a new story every week. See you in the next one. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attention. I wish all of you good health, good luck, and plenty of joy. Remember to subscribe, like, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next stories, better and more interesting ones. Thank you.